Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Healing Migraines Naturally podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Leslie Caesar, and today I'm talking with Cynthia, and Cynthia is going to share with us her healing journey from chronic migraines. Welcome, Cynthia. Welcome.
Thank you.
So you and I checked my notes. You and I started working together, it's almost 2 years ago now. I can't believe how the time goes. So tell us, what was your life like back then?
So I didn't start getting migraines until my mid 30s, but by the time I was in my mid late 50s, they were getting much more frequent, much worse, so that it had gone from just there were days that on a Saturday I didn't get to do anything because I was lying in the dark, to times I had to cancel meetings or not go to an event for work. And partly because they had gotten so bad that I was vomiting sometimes. And so like, that's the one thing. It's like, well, I guess I'm not going to this meeting, right? I just was getting really frustrated with the fact that, why is my body doing this, right? It just didn't make sense to me that a body should do this. There was clearly no purpose it was serving other than to get me to go lie in the dark. So what was that about? And I was just getting more and more frustrated and more often feeling awful, and the headaches would be more and more close together, so that then you can't even really think about what's causing what, because you don't kind of know where one ends and another begins, sort of.
Yeah, so, it's so interesting how similar these migraines start for most people, right? They start, for most of us, they're not starting when we're 5, although, children can have migraines, but usually they're starting when we're sort of in young adulthood, and they're not that frequent, and they get worse and worse and worse over time until, you can't attend a meeting because you're afraid you're going to vomit in the middle of it. And so you have that sort of very common progression where, if memory serves, when you first started getting migraines, you were taking like an over-the-counter, maybe even an Excedrin or something like that, feeling relatively well, kind of putting it out of your mind. Does that
Yes.
sound right?
Yeah, so I carried around Advil, increasingly important to carry around Advil all the time. And a lot of times that would work for a time, and it would come and go over several days, and then it would be gone. And I would just need to have the Advil with me all the time. But that actually started leading to vertigo. So then I was getting vertigo with the headaches, and I read somewhere that the Advil went with the vertigo. So then I was using Tylenol, which sort of worked and sort of didn't. And then I had been reading things. I had read a book by an MD who focuses on migraines, who's in Boston, which is not far from me. And I finally made an appointment with her, and she put me on a beta blocker and triptan. And those were sort of helpful for a while. The idea was that the beta blocker would maybe reduce the frequency, and of course that's really hard to measure, but what effect it's having. And I was getting like maybe a tiny change. And then the triptan would work, it might work for 12 hours or something like that. But then what I would realize is what would have been a 4-day headache of feeling horrible the whole time was now a 10-day headache with some breaks from feeling horrible. And then it just becomes harder and harder to know, okay, is this the same headache, or is this a new headache, or what, what's happening? And so after I started with you, I tapered off. I think I might have right away stopped using that medication. I'd gone off the beta blocker a while earlier because it wasn't clear it was doing anything. And I think I might have stopped the naratriptan right away as soon as we started working together. But anyway, certainly very quickly stopped using that and started using only the occasional aspirin. And that's now what I do along with the homeopathic remedy that you provide to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is, the unfortunate progression. I try to get this message out that when you suppress the symptoms of the migraine, right? The body starts generating, it starts fighting that suppression, and it starts generating more and more of the migraine symptoms. And so, what turned into, well, I'm going to miss a half a day of work. Now you're going 10 days, wondering is it the same migraine? Am I in rebound? Am I just not feeling well? What's going on here? It's a very, very common progression. So I actually have a new client, and she was telling me that this has happened to her, and when she tells her neurologist, she's been to multiple neurologists. You recommended this, I started it, it worked for a little bit, but it's not working anymore. The neurologists act like, I've never heard of this before. You're the only person that this has happened to. And when she was telling me this, I was kind of dumbfounded, because it happens all the time. I don't know why a neurologist wouldn't be seeing this.
Wouldn't know.
So, so you kind of got to the point where your intuition, you kind of had this intuitive knowing, if I could just get to the root cause of this and somebody could help me address this, my body would stop generating these migraines. Is that kind of the point that you got to?
Exactly. Yes, exactly. And while I was going, I eventually started, while I was having these long headaches, right? And you can't watch anything, you can't read anything. And I started listening to podcasts to try to find, about migraines, and to try to find people talking about something like this. And I eventually found yours, but I first found a lot that were by men who were maybe also neuroscientists, who were maybe vegan, who were, who had this whole other direction they were going. And I thought, there's something wrong here, because it's more women than men who get these. And it wasn't fitting. And eventually through that search is when I found your podcast, and you were sort of speaking that language of, your body knows what to do with this. We just need to help it figure out how to do that. Right?
Yeah. So what motivated you to do the crazy thing of reaching out to somebody who wasn't local to you and you had only listened to over the internet? What motivated you to do something like that?
I mean, what motivated me was just how extreme this was, and feeling like I can't do this anymore. I'm not going to live this way anymore. And I will say, I was quiet at first about the fact that I was doing it, to explain to other people that I'm, reaching out to this other person. It was, several years post-pandemic, my job was completely virtual. So the idea of working with someone virtually, that wasn't so foreign. But for this intensity of care, it was like, all right, that's maybe a lot. But I just was ready to take the risk. And I felt pretty well read, and pretty much as if I had enough ways of sort of verifying that you were real, your degree was real, all of those sorts of things. Yeah.
That's so interesting. I didn't know that you didn't tell anybody, but that's so common. Like, I've heard that from other clients. They're like, I'm not telling my sister I'm working, she'd think I was crazy. She would say, you found her on Facebook, or, so I will have clients that say, I'm not telling these particular people that I'm doing this.
Yes, at least for a little while. Yeah.
And then, really, like you say, it was just you couldn't live like this anymore, basically.
Yeah, I just did not want to do it anymore. And I was always I hated even using the word migraine. I hated to be, one of those people who gets migraines. And like I say, I just had this idea that there had to be, and I was sort of fascinated by finding, I think, the explanation, and figuring that out. And I've had this idea that, okay, I could see some evolutionary purpose, that if someone is sort of so exhausted and feeling so poorly, what you would want them to do is go hide in a cave in the dark while everyone went off on the hunt and then came back, right? So I get why it might be adaptive, but it's not adaptive to my world right now, and there's got to be a way to figure that out.
Well, I love that you say that, because one of the core tenets of naturopathic medicine is that what we call symptoms, what we're trying to get rid of, is actually the productive adaptation that the body is making to the environment that it's in. Our body is always trying to survive, and it's trying to flourish in the particular environment that we have put ourselves in, either through our own doing or due to forces outside of our control, right? So, but our
Yeah.
body is always trying to flourish and adapt and continue to function, even if the conditions are less than optimal. Whether the physical conditions or the mental or emotional conditions are less than optimal, the body's always adapting to that and it's trying to flourish, it's trying to function. So, in order to continue to function, it has to make some accommodations, right? We can't have it all. We can't have an environment that maybe isn't conducive to our health and flourishing and yet still feel healthy and still flourish, right? We want to have it all, but we can't have it all. So the body is trying to survive and it's adapting, accommodating to the environment that it's in. But the trade off is sometimes we have these symptoms that are causing us suffering and are very unpleasant. But from the body's perspective, it's like, well, at least I kept you alive. You didn't just drop dead in this environment. Like, we're still going, we're still going. But yeah, it can be very unpleasant. That's for sure.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
So I like how you
That makes
pull in that adaptive response. You were tired of the
yeah.
adaptive response, basically.
Yes. Yes. Yes, exactly. Yes.
So, what were you? Were you nervous to start? Were you worried? Like sometimes people are afraid that I'm going to recommend, crazy things or things that they might not be able to do. Were you nervous?
I think probably my biggest fear was that it wouldn't help. Um, I think I was ready to, and I think I was a little bit already sort of prone to thinking the way you describe as in the naturopathic thinking and all of that sort of stuff. So that felt relatively comfortable to me. I so yeah, I think I didn't want to be proven wrong about that. So that was maybe my biggest fear.
Yeah, that it wouldn't work. You wouldn't feel better.
Yeah,
And what
yeah.
was the most surprising thing to you about the whole process of restoring your health?
So there were tons of surprises. I have so many pages of notes and drawings and um, then my thinking about my notes afterward because I was learning all of these things from you about nutrition and really much, sort of metabolic things and much more about how circulation works and how nutrients get distributed and all those sorts of things that were I'm sure I didn't need to take all the notes and follow that in as much depth as I did in order to be helped, but I found that fascinating and completely surprising. So there were just a lot of pieces of that I feel like are why don't we know this? And I guess we don't all know it because it's kind of complicated to explain. But so that sort of what the answer turned out to be is exactly what we were talking before, right? This is the body's adaptive response, and this is the sort of the internal environment that it's responding to. All the pieces of that, the liver overload and the internal toxins and trying to get nutrients to the cells and all of those things that go way beyond just being a vegetarian and eating lots of good food, which is what I was doing, right? So it felt like I was being really healthy, and in fact, it just was far off. So all of that was really surprising. The other surprising piece was the mental emotional part of it, which again, I was in therapy at the time, but still am. I'm a therapist. I've been in therapy before. But there was work that we did that sort of cut to the chase of things that I hadn't cut to the chase of before and that were really critical in this. And so that was really interesting and surprising too.
Yeah, I have, I have had clients that are therapists, and I love working with therapist clients because um, we're working, for most of my clients, we're also working on the mental and emotional component that's contributing to the migraines. And um, a lot of clients, like, who aren't therapists, when I talk about the mental and emotional component, they'll ask me, well, is it like therapy? Are you like a therapist? And I'm like, well, no, I'm not a therapist. And, but it is work that I'd be curious, I'm genuinely curious your perspective as a therapist, but it's sort of under that sort of same umbrella. Would you say that mental and emotional work?
Yes, and I think of course, I'm only one client. I only have experience with you with one client being me. But my sense was that there are some common patterns that you see in your clients. And so that allowed you to sort of go right to some key questions that it might take a really long time in therapy to get to because you'd be working on all kinds of different things and you're not going after this particular symptom. Um, so, so yes, it was very similar to the work you might do in therapy if you handed your therapist a map and said, "I want to work on fixing this," right?
Okay, yeah. Okay, yeah. That makes sense. That makes sense. And this is what I will tell, like prospective clients that are reaching out and they have questions around this. I will say, I'm very honed in as to just the mental and emotional piece that's contributing to your migraines. But in therapy, you might be addressing any number of things, right? And so, what I found in my work, yes, you're absolutely right. There's some recurring themes, there's some recurring patterns amongst us women who are prone to migraines. And that does kind of give a inkling into a roadmap, sort of kind of a well-worn path, a path that's a little bit easier to see through the wilderness, rather than you as a therapist working with a new client, right? You're more kind of like, okay, where's you know I just have a jungle in front of me here. How where's the destination? Where's the route through things? Does that resonate?
Yes, I think that makes perfect
And I
sense.
think
Yes.
too, somebody might be going through, say, a divorce, but that may not be contributing to their migraines. But they might be going,
Right. There might be slightly controlled.
yeah,
Yeah,
right. But you
right.
might be going to a therapist because you're going through a divorce and you need to work on things relative to that. But if it's not contributing to your migraines, that's what I'm looking for. What are the mental
Yes.
and emotional factors that are actually contributing to the migraines? And if you want to talk about your divorce, yeah, see a therapist, but we're probably not going to get into that because it's not really contributing to the migraine. It's a different piece.
Yes. And I'm sure the mental emotional piece stuff that we worked on helped with my migraines and also contributed to other therapy stuff, right? It's not that it's entirely separate, but it was just like pulling on a very particular thread, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah,
Yeah.
interesting. And how are you feeling now? What's life like for you now?
So, very different. I mean, I still occasionally get headaches. Usually what happens now is I'll get a little bit of something and I'll be able to use the homeopathic remedy and that might take it away completely. Occasionally, I will still get one that's nowhere near as bad as it used to be, but uncomfortable for a day or even a couple of days. But it's much less severe. And because they're so far apart now I'm able to look back and say, like, oh, yeah, I see what I did there, right? I did not need to do that extra workout on Friday morning after I was already, feeling all these things. It's like, yeah. And so that's helping me to at least feel I have more control, even if ultimately I'm still getting a few here and there, but spending a whole lot less time. And I also, they just don't get to the point where I'm in a dark room with the sound turned all the way down. They don't get to that point. I might need a really quiet day or something like that, but it's just not the same. And in the meantime, that's on top of, right? So I have a fair bit of stressful things caring for aging parents, and I'm just starting a psychotherapy practice at the age of 62. So, a lot going on, and still feeling really good. I think the most dramatic thing I noticed recently was over Christmas, I traveled to see my children who are adults. Um, and it involved flying, it involved being at high altitude. I was waking up too early because of the time zone change and not sleeping well because of the high altitude, and hiking, doing all of these things. And I was fine. I was even fine like after I flew home, and all those sorts of things. And I think one of the most important things I did was I we were renting a house, and so we went to Whole Foods and got eggs and greens and a couple of other things. And so every morning I had my giant pile of greens and my two eggs, and then I just at other meals just did my best to eat as well as I could, but I knew I had done that. And so I think that really helped me too, and that just would never have occurred to me before, before doing this work.
That's fantastic. I mean, you listed some of the most common migraine triggers, right? I mean, getting up early to catch the flight. Uh-oh, now I've got a
Yeah.
migraine, right? Now I'm in the airport. Oh my goodness, the smells, the chaos, right? The stress, the airplane, the altitude. I mean, it's just like a checklist for a migraine to occur. So I love that. I
Yes.
love that you were able to enjoy that time with your family and feel good through all of that. Travel is so stressful.
Yes, yes, it was really amazing. And so it would have been well worth it if I ended up with a headache, but I was like, wow, I just got through that without a headache.
Well, and then too, like what I'm hearing is, okay, I'm going to make sure that I'm starting my day out on a good footing, right?
Yes.
And then if I have that good footing in place, and lunch is, a little sketchy. It's McDonald's drive-through, or whatever. It's catch as catch can. At least I have that good foundation that I laid down, and that sounds so simple, and sort of
Hmm.
like oh well, no brainer, right? But here's the thing, like when you're traveling, and it sounds like you were maybe in an Airbnb with family members,
Yeah.
so it can be very difficult to take good care of ourselves when there's other people with other agendas, other priorities, other things that they want to do. It can be very challenging to say, you know what? I need to have a breakfast. We need to have eggs on hand. I need to have my vegetables. That can be very, very difficult to actually implement. And so this is part of, you know, to um, to take good care of ourselves, having whether it's the confidence, a lot of us who are prone to migraines, we're more on the people pleasing side. That's a recurring dynamic.
Mhm.
We put everybody ahead of ourselves. We're the last person that we're going to take care of. And so changing that pattern for a lot of women is something that's necessary for them to just, eat a breakfast while they're sharing an Airbnb with other people who maybe say, breakfast? Oh, I just have my coffee, right? We don't, I don't have time for that, or let's get going, or, we'll eat on the run, or that type of thing. Now, I'm not saying that, your family is like that, but just, as an example, how difficult just doing something like that can be for a lot of people.
Yes, it really can be hard. And in this case, everyone was sort of totally willing to go with that. But it helped that I was really clear what I wanted and I thought it through ahead of time. Okay, what do I need? What do I want to make sure I do? And then I could be really easygoing on the rest of it. And for the most part, everyone was happy to join me in my eggs and vegetables for breakfast.
Right? They're like, oh, yeah, some people are like, oh, good. I can actually eat.
Yeah.
Well, and I love too, because certainly, we have to eat in a health supporting way. We have to have a health supporting eating habits. I don't think this is a big surprise to people. And that's how I teach my clients to eat. But also, we have to be flexible. We have to be able to enjoy our life. We have to be able to go on a trip and eat in a restaurant or get, heaven forbid, fast food sometimes, eat the food in an airport. And so I like how you were able to, kind of lay that foundation and then feel confident that you didn't have to stick with like a regimented, so-called migraine diet, food trigger avoidance diet. You could kind of go with the flow, right? For lunch and dinner, with the rest. Oh, you want to eat there? Okay, great. I'll eat there. And it's not, the constant, oh, well, you guys eat and I'll get something later, or, you're at the table. Oh, what's in the sauce? A 15-minute conversation with the waiter. What's in the sauce? Can you make it like this? You're just like, yeah, you know what? I'll be able to weather this for lunch and dinner.
Yep, exactly. That freedom I'll be able to find a way to function in that environment, right? It's for that short amount of time, yes. And not that whole thing of looking for the food. I don't know if you would phrase it this way, but it's sort of like looking for the food that I do need, as opposed to having this list of 500 things that I cannot have, and trying to find the food that isn't those things is a really helpful
Yeah,
change.
I love how you put that. Yeah, that really is the flip, right? Because one, the food list, the food trigger list is coming from like an anxiety. Oh, is this going to have it in there? I have to avoid this, rather than, oh, what do I just pull in, onto the plate? What do I, put into my shopping cart? What can I eat, from all of these things here?
Yeah.
What am I able to eat? I'll eat that. Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
great shift. It's a great shift. And I like, too, that you are still occasionally getting some headaches, right? So this is, this is another thing that I think is important. This is not like a miracle cure for migraines where we waved a wand over you and you never have, a headache again in your life. You never have any other symptoms or some sort of magical pill. Our health is in continuous flux, right? We have to maintain our health. Our health can take a big hit through an accident or an injury through, no fault of our own. So it's really just the process of living and continuing to maintain our health, take good care of ourselves. And also when you're not having, 15 days of head pain in a row, and you're having a little bit of a head pain flare, you can say, oh, okay, yeah, I worked out a little bit too much. I put too many stressors sort of on myself, and it overwhelmed my vitality, and now I'm feeling that, right? So for most people, they're going to feel like they have more control, they have more agency, instead of, this thing that's just sort of coming out of nowhere, striking me down like I'm being punished by Zeus. It's like, oh, I can kind of feel where my body is, and maybe this would be a little bit better thing for me to do today than this thing that I had originally planned, because I can feel that my resiliency and my vitality is a little bit lower today. So I'm going to honor that. And some days are easier to do that than others, and some days we miscalculate and we go, oh, well, I guess that was a little too much.
Yes, or like the nervous energy overtakes all that, and I'm just not listening to myself or don't want to hear, right? And there you go.
Right,
Yeah.
right. But is that because, so then are you having the head pain because your body is defective and you're doomed? Or is it that interplay, right, between our free will,
Yeah.
unconscious factors, and the environment that we're in?
Yes. Which is so reassuring to feel that that's how it works, and then it becomes sort of interesting to figure out, as opposed to just like you said, like feeling you've been struck down by Zeus, or that there was something in the sauce,
Right,
right?
yeah.
Or,
Yeah.
right.
Well, good. So, when you and I were working together, you were in school, you were in a major life transition, and I'm just thrilled to hear from you. And you're in practice now, and sounds like your practice is flourishing.
Yes, yes. So that's been really exciting. I'm sort of in my second year of seeing clients and feeling really, now it sort of rolls off my tongue to say, I'm a therapist, which is, something that I just wanted to do for so long. But going to grad school to, feel like the old person who's doing something, well, that was a little hard when I was, 58, 59, 60 years old. So, it's exciting to now be through it and starting this thing that I really feel like I'm going to be doing into my 80s. That was part of the reason why I, turned to the change now. And now I really feel like, yeah, I will have that energy to be able to keep doing this and get really good at it over the next, 20 years.
Yeah, that's why they call it a practice, right? It's constant
Yes.
practice.
Yes, yes.
Well, I mean, just amazing. All the people that you're going to be able to help, that you've already helped and are going to continue to be able to help. And you wouldn't be able to do that if you were trying to focus on a client and trying not to vomit and the
Yeah.
brain fog and everything else. So I'm really happy for you.
Yes. Thank you. And I'm so grateful for your work.
Well, wonderful. Thanks so much for sharing your story. I'm sure a lot of women will resonate with what you've gone through with your migraines, and I can't wait to hear from you. You reach out every so often. Let me know how you're doing, and I can't wait to continue to hear how you're doing.
Great. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right.
All right, great. Thank you so much.